And we can go on to it's not happening tonight. It's happening tomorrow, right? Game that is recording this
Yeah.
on Saturday. Just make them out that
Yep.
time. So Mavs Clippers Game 7. This is, no road team has ever won this all the 7 game series and won all 4 games on the road. And so the Mavs are kind of up against history, but the way the series has gone, the road teams won every time. I'm gonna throw it to you first, Dogger. I'm not sure if you've been able to watch many of these games, but you got to watch them, in the morning because I know you go to bed pretty early. And these
No,
games are.
no,
I'm just messing with you.
I've been watching a lot of this series.
Okay. Oh,
Luka's
yeah, I forget.
obviously,
I forget you're
yeah,
pro Luca.
like like for those who don't know, my love for Luka knows no bounds. But no, yeah, so I've been watching, and it's been a back and forth series. I mean, like the Clippers looked just about done after game two, and then Luka gets hurt. Um, and then back and forth. Right now, where are we? I guess it depends on what the state of Luka is. I mean, like
Okay.
tomorrow. I mean, he dropped. I forget exactly how many points the other night, but it was like 40-ish, and he was looking fierce. But it's hard for me to bet against Kawhi Leonard. I think as much. I mean, it's not that Kawhi is underrated. Like of course he's not, but I think in some ways he is as a killer in the playoffs. I mean,
Yeah.
in Game 6 when he gets into that like mid range area, he gets like his shoulders working. He can push people around. Any shot he can make, sort of in that like 13 to 17 foot range, that's almost like a layup for him.
Yeah.
At times it seems like so. Right now, I mean, I vary on who the best player in the NBA is, but I think Kawhi for a big game is the guy when it comes to getting a stop on one end and getting a bucket on the other. And I'm not going to put any money on this game, but if I were, then I would think about. I think that Kawhi will go in tomorrow and be the best player in that game.
Yeah. Just real quick before I go to you, John. Yeah, I remember when he was a Spur back when I liked him. Um, the last season he actually played the playoff series. I think when it all happened. But that first round we played against Grizzlies. I think that's when he really kind of came on. That was when David Fizdale made that comment. Was it take that for I forget take that for dad or whatever? Because he was killing them. Like he was our closer. That like it. I remember watching
Classic,
that
yeah.
series and I remember going okay like quiet. Oh, I'm gonna say his name. Number 2 is our closer. I said his name at the time. Number 2 is our closer, and he was taking all the tough shots, making them, willing us to victory. And then obviously we played. I think we played the Rockets next series, and he still was, even though we ended up beating Harden, and that's a whole different thing. But yeah, sorry, I'm gonna go quick. But yeah, it's an interesting series. John, I know you're a little bit more objective about Luka, maybe, and the Clippers. So what are your thoughts? As probably the most objective person in the room right now.
Yeah, I mean, Dogger loves
We
Luca.
really
You
have,
hate Kawhi.
yeah. So
um, I think it really just like I mean, this is a standard saying, and I don't want to sound too basic, but it just comes down to who's going to be the best player on the court.
Yep.
And I think the key for Luca in the last few games, he's shown a lot of signs of frustration. I mean, he had a pretty dumb foul last game. He didn't have the best game, but he still was, obviously diming up people and all this kind of stuff. But there was one point where, like, I think right before halftime, he just had a really dumb foul and an inbound pass for the Clippers. And it started to feel like, okay, Luke, like you got to calm down, you got to reel it in because this team is built around you. And so if they start off hot and he is feeling like, because he's a very emotional player, but he feeds off that, right? Like when he's going and he's pissed off at you and all this kind of stuff, like he's gonna kill you. And so if they can do that early, as opposed to potentially just getting into frustrating spots and him getting in that sort of mindset, I think the Mavericks have the ability to win this game. But also, we know that Luka is going to perform. Kristaps Porzingis has to be better.
yes,
Obviously, I said that it comes down to who the best player is, but Luka has shown the ability to be the best player on the court in this series, and they still lose. And so, with the Clippers, if Kawhi is playing like he has been, they're probably going to win, right? But if Porzingis can actually step up and be the player that they expect him to be, the second best player on this Mavericks team, I mean, he has such a size advantage. The fact that they're having to bring in Boban to actually take advantage of someone being tall is kind of crazy to me. And I know that Porzingis isn't necessarily like built as big as Boban and as strong and all that kind of stuff. But he's being guarded by like Kawhi and Paul George and dudes who are significantly smaller than him. He can shoot right over them, and he's just not being aggressive. And so, yeah, it's really just going to come down to the stars. I would look for Paul George to have a good game. I think he was embarrassed by last year. I think he's embarrassed by the way that the Clippers went out. Obviously, he re-signed with the team already, so the Clippers are his organization for the foreseeable future. Wanting to do well right now, because just to put it plainly, he could potentially even be worried of Kawhi leaving if they lose. I don't think he'll leave, but it's got to be in the back of some of these players' heads of like, we have to perform because we know Kawhi is going to.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let me just say my thoughts. So I'll start with this. I think if I had a gun to my head, I think the Mavs are going to win. I think they'll pull it off just because Game 6, it took number 2, a great effort, even besides and a very efficient performance too. Very rare that I think that needs to be said too. His efficiency, shooting and such. But I don't think you're going to game like that from Reggie Jackson again. Reggie's good, but I don't think he's going to do that. And yeah, I would imagine maybe especially when Luka's on the bench, where Carlisle gets Kristaps more. He's got to get I think it was exactly what you said. Was I was thinking Kristaps should be getting those post up opportunities, even if he's not going to bully them. Just the things we saw earlier in his career. Remember when he was giving guys the shimmy and just post fading. I'm not saying every possession, but especially when Luka's getting just slow the game down when Luka's not on the court. You have, like you mentioned, you have a size advantage. The dude's 7'3", not even including his lanky wingspan, and just maybe it'll get him in rhythm too, and it will create and it just so.
Yeah. For clarification too, like the tallest player the Clippers are using is like Marcus Morris.
Yeah,
like Zubac is rarely playing.
Yeah, they've converted this. They're just resorted to small ball, and yeah, and I think Kristaps is key. He can't. He had 7 points last game. You can't do that in Game 7, and then also
it's been so rough with him.
Especially we saw it last year in the bubble. I know it was the bubble, but still, we saw glimpses last year. It was that in Game 1, right? And he got ejected. He had 27 points. He had a very good series last year, and you could argue that Clippers team was better talent wise. I'm not sure. It was close, and so and then also I know I used to love him, but just not that confident in Paul George in a closeout Game 7 game. I love him, but it's just too streaky. So. Or I used to love him. I mean, I'm okay with him now. I don't care, regardless. But also, maybe my heart's speaking a little bit. But I'm going for Mavs. I never thought I'd say that as a Spurs fan. But I think the Mavs will win. I hope the Mavs will win. But it might probably be better for the NBA if the Clippers win, because God forbid that the 2 LA teams get bounced in the first round. So, very realistic possibility there. Is there anything else?
Random fun fact about this series: the Mavericks I think they were favored to win the game last night and win the series. But in the title odds, the Mavs are 25-1 favorites, and the Clippers are 10-1 favorites. So the Clippers are all over double the chance to win the title than the Mavericks, and yet the Mavericks are favored to win the series. I thought that was kind of crazy to me, but I think that just shows how much confidence people have in the Clippers' ability that if they can come out of this series to beat this West, where LeBron and the Lakers are out, it's anybody's game at this point.
Okay,
so I'm not saying I have that same confidence, but the betting odds have that confidence right now that the Clippers are a 10-1 favorite. I don't know what the favorites are outside of the East. I'm sure the Nets are the overwhelming favorite to win the whole thing. I would imagine the Sixers and Bucks maybe have about the same, maybe even better odds than the Clippers.
I think it's those 3 teams right now. We'll see what happens with the Clippers, but the West is so open with teams that we are not used to seeing this far. Who knows? And I think that they are, in terms of quality, maybe they're all a level below those top teams in the East, but they could all make that run. We could see finals games being played in Utah or Denver and all these places that aren't like Golden State or Los Angeles. So it's going to be a wild month of playoff basketball in the West.
I will say this is the first time in the West that I've never truly felt like there's like 1-2 teams that I like feel super confident about going to the
Yeah.
finals.
Because we've always
Mhm.
had. I mean, last year we had the Lakers, Clippers, then we had Golden State for that run, and then, not to self promote or self shout, my Spurs for a while. They were, for a while. There was always,
Absolutely.
there's always a preeminent favorite, and this year's wide open. So
It's always two, right? It's always like the 1 seed and then like the 65 win 2 seed.
When you said-
Yeah, like the Rockets, the Spurs.